Today, we are diving into one of the heaviest hitters in all of political philosophy, Thomas Hobbes's Leviathan. Now, you have to imagine the world he was living in, the English Civil War. Society was literally falling apart. And out of that chaos, he asked a massive question. What does it actually take to stop us from completely destroying each other? So, Hobbes kicks things off with this huge thought experiment. He asks us to just imagine, for a second, a world without any rules. No government, no police, nobody to tell you what to do. Total, absolute freedom. What would that actually look like? What would you do? And maybe more importantly, what do you think your neighbors would do? Well, for Hobbes, the answer is not good. This is his legendary and frankly terrifying description of what that life would be like. He was convinced that without some kind of power to keep us all in check, our lives would just be a miserable free-for-all. But wait a minute, how on earth did he get to such a dark place? All right, to really get Hobbes, you have to start where he did. He wanted to strip everything away, all the laws, all the culture, all of society, and just look at humanity in its most raw, basic state. This is what he called the state of nature. And pay attention to that last phrase, a common power to keep them all in awe. See, for Hobbes, this isn't some historical fantasy. It's what happens any time that central authority breaks down. You get total freedom, sure, but that freedom has a huge catch. You also get total, paralyzing insecurity. Now, when Hobbes says war, you're probably thinking of battles and armies, right? But for him, it's something more constant. It's the permanent threat of conflict. It's the feeling every single day that a fight could break out over anything at any time. It's basically a psychological state of endless fear. And the fallout from this constant threat? It's the end of everything we value. Think about it. Why would you bother planting crops if someone stronger can just come and take them? Why build anything if it can just be stolen? Without safety, all the things that make life meaningful, art, science, cooperation, they're just impossible. All you're left with is fear and the very real danger of a violent death. Okay, I know what you might be thinking. This sounds way too extreme. People aren't that bad. But here's where Hobbes gets really clever. He argues that you, yes, you, already prove his point with your everyday actions. This is his knockout punch. Even in our society, with all its laws and police, you lock your front door. You might even lock up valuables from people who live in the same house. Hobbes would say that every time you click that lock, you are admitting that you don't fully trust the people around you. He's not making this dark view up. He's just pointing out what our own behavior already shows. So, if we accept this grim picture even just a little bit, the next question has to be why? What is it about human nature that makes a world without rules so terrifying? Hobbes boils it down to 3 core drivers. Now, this is a surprising place to start, right? Equality. But hold on, Hobbes doesn't mean this in a warm, fuzzy moral way. For him, it's a cold, hard fact. It's an equality of vulnerability. As he says, even the weakest person can kill the strongest if they're smart about it or if they team up. Nobody is invincible. And that basic fact that we can all be harmed by each other is the spark that lights the fire. So, this fundamental equality leads to conflict in 3 ways. First up is competition. We fight each other for resources, for gain. Second, diffidence, which is a fancy word for distrust and fear. We attack others to protect ourselves, a sort of get them before they get me mentality. And third, glory. We fight over our reputation, over insults to show everyone else that we're not to be messed with. Gain, safety, and reputation. That's the trifecta of trouble. Man, it seems like we're just wired for conflict, right? But Hobbes isn't a total downer. He says, okay, our nature gets us into this mess, but our nature can also get us out. It turns out we have the tools to build an escape route. While some of our feelings push us to fight, others pull us toward peace. The biggest one, no surprise, is the fear of a violent death. But we also have a desire for, as he puts it, commodious living. Nice stuff, a comfortable life. And finally, we have the hope that if we work hard, we can actually get those things. These feelings give us the motivation to look for a way out. So our passions give us the motive for peace, and our ability to reason gives us the plan. Our brain logically figures out a set of rules for survival, and these are what Hobbes calls the laws of nature. But don't get hung up on the word law. He's not talking about commands from God. These are just the smart, rational conclusions you come to if you want to stay alive. Okay, this next bit is super important to get. There's a difference between a right of nature and a law of nature. The right is your absolute freedom, your liberty to do literally anything you think you need to do to survive. The law, on the other hand, is a rule that restricts that freedom. It's reason telling you, hey, for your own good, you probably shouldn't do that. Hobbes lists a bunch of these laws, but they all really boil down to these two. First, the main goal: seek peace. But how? That's the second law, and it's the foundation of all society. You have to be willing to give up your right to do anything and everything, but only if everyone else agrees to do it too. This is the big trade. You give up some freedom to get a whole lot of security. But there's a huge problem, isn't there? Trust. It's great to agree to these rules, but how can you be sure the other guy is going to stick to the deal? This is where Hobbes brings out his big solution, the creation of the Leviathan. And the tool we use to escape is a contract or a covenant. It's pretty simple, really. It's a deal. We all agree to mutually transfer our rights. I give something up, you give something up, and we all get something much better: safety in return. And here it is, the heart of the social contract. It's not about us making promises to each other. Hobbes thinks that's way too flimsy. Instead, we all agree, as a group, to hand over our right to do whatever we want to a single common power. And that common power, that is the Leviathan. Hobbes named it after a monstrous sea creature from the Bible, and for good reason. This is the state, the sovereign. Its one and only job is to be so powerful, so awe-inspiring, that nobody would even dream of breaking the rules. It's the ultimate enforcer. This brings us right to the core of Hobbes's entire philosophy. It's a dilemma, a trade-off that was central to his time, and believe me, it is just as central to ours. So here's the deal he lays out for us, plain and simple. What do you lose? You lose that natural, wild freedom to do whatever you want, whenever you want. But what do you get in return? Well, basically, everything else. Peace, security, the ability to build, to create, to have a society. You trade chaos for order. And this really hammers home why the Leviathan needs to have absolute power. Because, as Hobbes famously says, promises without a credible threat to back them up are just words. They're empty. It's the fear of that sword, the power of the state, that holds the whole thing together. And so, Hobbes leaves us with this really stark, uncomfortable question. He offers a choice: the absolute, terrifying freedom of anarchy on one hand, or the ordered safety under an absolute power on the other. For him, there's no middle ground. So the question he was wrestling with hundreds of years ago is one we still have to ask ourselves today. How much of your freedom are you really willing to trade for security?